to episode 0 of New Era Challengers, New Generation Challengers. I was originally call this New Era Challengers till they called it New Generation. That will confuse me for 6 months. But welcome to New Generation Challengers episode 0, season 40 preview. My name is Brett Parnell, one of your co-hosts.
I'm Titi Fernandez.
We are really looking forward to getting started now that we actually have Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras content on our TV. So this will be really just a short episode, kind of give you guys an introduction to our podcast. I know we've got a lot of you now interacting with us on social media. Love it. We're really just gonna go over the um cast preview that we got to see earlier in the week and how it's gonna get this show onto the tee and ready to hit off next week for season 40. And that's about it. So do you want to get started, TT, with another one?
Yeah, I really liked seeing just the cast introductions. I will say, Katie, I did not like how she didn't mention her appearances on All Stars because I think it's important to also mention that. And I'm pretty sure she just said that she hasn't been back since she fell off the tower or whatever. So that did stick out to me. And I also really liked Mark's confessional when he talked about how he's here until the wheels fall off, and it just shows how much dedication he has to the game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You're right up on that with Katie, and it's interesting that she, with her performances, doesn't mention All Stars at all. Meanwhile, John A calls herself a two-time champion, though she has been average at best in the main show that we've seen through the 40 seasons. But with the differences that All Stars has been able to do, she's been able to really take advantage and have 2 wins and a very close second place finish.
Yeah, because her second place finish, she was the her and Kellyanne were the first girls. So yeah, you could argue that she is a two-time All-Stars champ and a second place first woman. But yeah, I liked seeing John A, but it was kind of confusing to me that how they allowed Katie to not mention her All-Stars appearances, but then allowed John A to call herself a champion, like you mentioned. But do you have any other thoughts on Era One?
Yeah, I love seeing that we got with Rachel and Tina, not only being reunited, but using the preview because I'm sure they know just as well as production does that editing is probably not going to allow them to talk about much outside of the current season once they actually move into the house and get into the show. The fact that late into the episode we see the two of them mention Veronica in season 40, which is such an iconic season, and she was an iconic character and multi-time challenge champion back in her day who we've seen recently not be at the same level, but still someone that's a big part of the history of the game, Tina and Rachel, and deserve to be mentioned alongside both of them at the start of such an iconic season.
Yeah, I really like how they did give her props because they were the Mean Girls Alliance. They were a trio, so it was nice to have production also just keep that in and make sure that they mentioned Veronica. Um, I did like seeing CT. Obviously, he is one of the most popular players, but I liked all the flashbacks, and I also liked his confessional on DM. And I liked how they were
Yes.
honoring her memory by mentioning her, but also putting a that picture of her and showing that clip back of when she took her
Yeah, I love that both, especially for in DM's case, because as we all know, she's sadly no longer with us. That she got that moment with CT late into the season, but I also like how they've set up this house based on what we've kind of seen online. If people follow spoiler channels, I was certainly expecting the house to not be what it was. So I really love how production has gone in and made sure that we got memories of some of those iconic challenge moments, be it when DM took a wig off, be it the bananas backpack, seeing that CT and Johnny are both living together in that gym every day, that those moments have been reflected in a season that will probably be iconic for not only just because it's season 40, but for a lot of these older school players, it's probably their last appearance, at least on the MTV version. Oh, that's the main show. I don't see a lot of these Era 1 and Era 2 people, if any of them, coming back for 41 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the house had like a medieval theme to it. It just everything looked kind of older, so it was nice having all those memories like as decoration, and it just kind of takes you back to the old days, just the vibe of the house does.
Absolutely. Anyone else you want to comment on in Era 1?
Um, I
Anything
will
else?
say I'm trying to think. Well, I think they did show a pole wrestle between Anissa and Kara and how Kara was able to take it out of Anissa's hands. I liked seeing that.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, I think I'm good to move on to era 2 if you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we do that, I do like that you mentioned Anissa and we got a decent amount of content with her. She's someone who comes out of Era 1 and probably has been on more seasons than anyone not named Johnny Bananas. But at the same time, Anissa is one of those players that, whether that be positive connections like her relationship with Tori or negative connections based on everything that went on in 39 between Nerys and Olivia, she has relationships in every era of this game.
Yeah,
And it's going to be
absolutely.
interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, she's played in all of the eras, so you can see that she definitely has some connections, whether they're good or bad. We'll have to see how that plays out and if that ends up helping her game or not.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting too because her and CT are going back. I think the only people that can say that they've played in pretty much everybody on the show at one point or another
Yeah, I agree.
as well. But he didn't start in Era 1, so he played with all of Era 1 when he was the rookie.
Yeah. But moving on to era 2, I really liked the clip of Emily Schramm and Cara pole wrestle, and we talked about this in our cast reveal episode, but I think it is worth to mention that Cara is seen as somebody that has a lot of upper body strength, and seeing how Emily Schramm was able to absolutely demolish her in that pole wrestle just I think really reminds people that Emily is someone that should be feared and she is coming into play.
Absolutely, it does. And in addition to that, I think it also reminds people talking about Kara. And we get this great clip that comes to the episode from Cutthroat, where we go back to seeing the rivalry between Kara and Laurel in its original days, with at the same time as we see that pole wrestle with Kara and Emily, and it shows us really how far Kara has came in this game from being a first boot in Fresh Meat 2 and a layup in Cutthroat to a two-time champion that everybody is pretty much afraid of unless you can get her in a puzzle challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like we saw in the preview and on the trailer, the scene of Kara having a mental breakdown and Laurel yelling at her, it really makes you wonder what exactly happened because at the end of All Stars 4, we saw that they were almost in a good place. They kind of realized that they're sisters, or they were calling themselves sisters, that they have a rivalry, and we even see Laurel giving a confessional saying that they're here to play and they're here to play together, so watch out. So I'm really interested to see how that relationship dynamic is going to shape out in season 40.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I really like Polly's confessional at this point, where I don't think anyone really knows what his current status is with Kara, but at the time they were a couple. And the fact that Polly is, despite literally in the corner of the party talking to Laurel in a one-on-one, able to just cut to Kara, we've been together for 6 years. This relationship is not good for you, is
Mm-hmm.
something I think every challenge fan, at at least every challenge fan that's in some way even a little bit supportive of Kara has been saying for pretty much 10, 15 years at this point.
Yeah, and I like how Polly highlighted that she like it's a sisterly bond, but she sadly seeks approval from Laurel. And I think that, like Polly said, it's not a good relationship. And to me personally, is when somebody has treated you like that for so many years, even though you've had ups and downs and good moments, it
Yeah.
just shows that that person is not rooting for you. That person is not in your corner. And even though you can say that it's friendly competition, I don't think that Laurel is the type of friend that Kara needs in her life.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing too that I liked, and we just talked a bit on a previous episode that you guys will see later if you're watching us on Tribal Council chat, but I talked about Survivor Winners at War that made it flush back in my head was when Aviv's introduced. And Durell says Aviv didn't tell me that she was going coming out here. And this, in my mind, I was going, oh no, this has Sandra and Boston Rob written all over it. And then right after we get a clip of the two of them winning, he goes, I won with her and I can't wait to work together again. And I'm really excited for that as somebody who I have not seen Fresh Meat One. I can't find that season anywhere. But despite that, Aviva's the player coming in that I am most excited to see for the first time. And after hearing so much about her win and what she's done outside the game, I can't wait to see her back on our screens. And if she and Durell can come back together and work together again as they were partners on the first Fresh Meat season, that's going to be a really interesting duo, especially with the fact that Durell, despite not winning, has been back quite a bit and does know these later eras, both in era 3 and era 4.
Yeah, I will add to that because I also got a flashback to Sandra, or to Rob not telling Sandra that he was going to be on there. But I don't know if that means, because at first he says, she didn't tell me that she was going to be there. And that also reminds me of Horacio and Olivia on season 39
Oh,
because the same thing happened. He did not tell her that she was going to be there. So I don't know if this is foreshadowing to say something is going to happen to the point where he didn't know she was going to be there, but then he's now excited that she's there, but something's going to happen down the road between them. Or if that just shows, if it's just a genuine, I can't wait to work with her.
yeah, that's a good point.
But do you have anything else from Era 2?
Kellyanne,
Kellyanne.
some good content with her coming back. We see there's certainly some history there between Kellyanne and other players, notably Kara, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out within this big team. Era 2, I sense, is the team that has some of the strongest players in the game of any era, but they also have the most drama and the most history. And I'm looking forward to seeing does that play out with a player that's just physically dominant like a Laurel or an Emily taking over or a Bananas? Or does it maybe give somebody like a Ryan Kehoe or a Derek the chance to sneak through? And we know from social media long before the season that being both in Phoenix, Derek has connections to Olivia, and maybe he can try to look at all of these past relationships going on in his team and see how can players like Olivia and John A help me move further in the game within this team that I might be a little on the outs of.
Oh, absolutely. And I will mention another thing about Era 2, and that is when we had that pool party scene and we see Derek, Ryan, Devin, Bananas, and they were just all getting naked and stripping in the pool. I thought that was so funny.
It
And it
was.
just really brought a lot of like lightheartedness to this season because it is going to be an intense competition and it is going to be the hardest season that they ever do. But also it's fun and it's you're playing with people that some of these people have played with for years, some of these people don't have never played with. So it's nice to see them also enjoying it and having fun.
Essentially on the day that they move in the house because they haven't had to compete yet at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, do you have anything else for Era 2?
No, I think everything's came up there. We mentioned pretty much everybody in that era.
Yeah. For Era 3, so that's gonna be we have Naya, we have Avery, we have Tori, and who was the
Devin,
other who was the other female that I'm missing?
I mean,
Is it I don't know. But with who?
Amanda.
Oh, Amanda.
There's a
She's
reason
just
you and I forgot about her.
So obviously I was really happy to see that we have Tori back, we have Avery back, which like we've mentioned, I really hope we see more of her and I want to see a more spicy or just more depth to her character. And then we have Naya back, and I'm always happy to see her back. I think that she has grown a lot as a person, and I think it's really good that MTV is giving opportunity to people who are growing as people and are not the same person that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a good point with those two. Avery and Naya are two players I think could really use this season to. I don't want to say that they are leading the franchise or anything the way that we might be getting from a Tori or Michelle or Olivia, but Avery and Naya are players that I think could really cement themselves with a good season here as worthwhile to keep bringing back into the 40s, unlike a lot of this cast.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did get Nia was trusting in Laurel about her panic attacks and she was talking about how she had an emergency with vaping and stuff, but I don't think anybody else caught this, but I did catch right when they were doing the when Rachel was giving her speech, there is a shot and in the background you can see bananas hitting a vape. And
It's funny.
I took a screenshot of it. I'm gonna see if I can sh or I'll just show you.
Yeah, you're right.
So I thought that was funny that they had that big moment about stop vaping or whatever, and then in the background there is a small shot of that. But the men in this era are I'm also really excited to see. We have Leroy, we have Devin, um, who else do we have?
Um,
Yep, Corey.
um, Jordan to show up late,
Yes. What did you think of them?
and it's a interesting group. Um, I think Jordan is going to be probably the biggest character here, and we saw him come into the house. So right at the end of the episode, I was kind of hoping that we would have got people's reactions to Jordan showing up. I guess that's how episode 1 is going to probably start, is with Jordan walking in, which will be interesting. I can't wait to see Tori's reaction to that, notably because they all know somebody's missing. I'm sure, even though they've never said it, that this cast has a good idea it's him. Because when you think of Era 3 men, there's somebody missing that's notable, and if it's any other Era 3 male, it's kind of okay, great. We'll take them out.
Yeah, and I think it also shows it says a lot about how production sees Jordan and how they they know how much he adds to the franchise. They know how much he's a very important character to the show, and they I feel like unless you are CT Bananas or Jordan, no, the production would not have allowed them to come in late and also giving them a grand entrance and also letting them showcase what they were doing before, which is the race car driving for Jordan.
Yeah, exactly. Before we move on, I've got to bring up Amanda here because she gets two really interesting segments of this premiere. And the first one is we just talked about the Rachel, Tina, Veronica, like Mean Girls alliance. And it's almost, they call it Battle of the Eras, but we're almost seeing like the OG Mean Girls and the new era Mean Girl. We're missing you, Ashley Mitchell, still, but coming together where Rachel and Tina see Amanda right away as almost one of their own, even though I don't think she's ever played with them.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting, and I I have mixed feelings about this because I agree you have the OG Mean Girls and yeah, they were mean, but it almost seems different to me because and again, I haven't watched all of the old seasons. I have watched a lot of them, but I have noticed that the OG Mean Girls are more authentic and as they were road rules and real world, like that era I could see is more authentic. And you see that we know Veronica is a champion, we know Rachel is a champion, and Tina is a finalist.
Yeah,
So it to me it says okay, they were mean, but they also like helped build the franchise and they did add a lot to the franchise. And then you have someone like Amanda who is coming in, and I like we've talked about, I'm not a big fan of Amanda, and I think it's almost like she is trying to like suck up to them in a way and try to like involve herself or in something where you know that like we've talked about, Amanda is just there for screen time. And if she doesn't cause her antics or is doesn't try to bully people, she's not going to get screen time and she's not going to get called back because she's not good at basically anything. So that's my thoughts on that.
I agree with you here. I think in Amanda's case, she doesn't have much of a choice than to try to push that way because as much as I'm on the side of the two names I'm about to mention and not on hers, you have to can at least put yourself in her shoes and know walking into a house and seeing Michelle there and seeing Tori there and seeing Devin there, it's seeing bananas there. It's like, oh shit, this is not good from her
Hmm.
perspective. So she's got to find somewhere. It's going to be interesting to see if it goes anywhere or not. But at least that's somebody that she, with both Rachel and Tina, that she might be able to work with, because certainly in her own era and in era for her, there's probably very few people there that haven't had to live with her yet, unlike the two of them. And living with Amanda just doesn't seem very fun. So it's probably best for her to go to the older people.
Oh, absolutely. And those people have also been removed from the show for a long time. So it's like you mentioned, they maybe haven't talked to a lot of people or maybe haven't watched all the seasons, maybe haven't seen everything. So I think she, those were pretty much the only people that she could go to form an alliance because a lot of the Era One people are going to be in the mindset of we've been out of here for so long, we're coming in without any connections. When you have people that from Era Two that have been coming back for years and have been making connections with the Era Three, the Era Four players. So I think it was almost like you mentioned her only choice to try to make a connection with somebody who isn't as familiar with her antics.
Yeah, exactly. And the other scene that I wanted to bring up with her here is we get this, at least to me, and I might be remembering this wrong, so don't hold me to it if it was only once. But we get this kind of bizarre apology scene with Amanda and Kara, and
But yeah, Amanda and
it
Cara.
cuts to a scene in the house from the show where Amanda made a comment in regards to Cara Maria's horse, which, if you know Cara, her horse ownership is pretty much the love of her life.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I caught on to here, and I don't know if I'm just mistaking it or if I heard it wrong, I am a newer fan to this show, but right around the time of Spice Lies and Allies, didn't Amanda repeat the same thing in an Instagram story and force it twice?
See, I don't know because I don't follow Amanda, so I haven't seen that. But
I
I will
followed her
say,
since right after that season got about halfway through, but I did
I
follow her for a few episodes back when we got in really good Michelle, Ashley, Amanda live. That was a very short-lived alliance.
I will mention that she said during that confessional, she said she buried her horse, so now we can bury the hatchet or something along those
Yeah,
lines. And I don't know, I feel like if I put myself in Kara's shoes and if somebody said that they wished my dog died and then now they said she buried her dog, now let's bury the hatchet. I feel like that's kind of
yeah,
insensitive about somebody's pet,
absolutely.
but
But there isn't very much content we're gonna get from Amanda that isn't insensitive when the challenge is on filming a season.
absolutely.
All
But
right, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, moving on to Era 4.
Era 4. So the new generation, where we get the namesake of this podcast from. What stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me was just showing the all the skill sets, and I think this was on the trailer too, and I think it was Nerys narrating. She's talking about how they have the brains, they have the brawn, they have the beauty. They really have everything in that era when you have super physically strong females like Jenny West, Casey, Olivia, who are very brawn type players, and then you have players like Nerys and Michelle who are really good at the mental puzzle games and then are also very good with endurance. And then we know how strong Michelle is in the water. She is definitely the best swimmer out of all of those people, but then also is just good with a lot of other things. And same with the men. We see Horacio. We see in the trailer we do see a few shots of what looks like it could be dailies or elimination rounds with some helmets on. So I'm excited to see what all that is about. But I just think it showcased that a lot of people are underestimating Arrow 4 and we really have a lot of talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I don't think any of the players are going to be underestimating Era 4. I think a lot of them have played with them. The fan base, on the other hand, every time you go on it on a Facebook group and see a poll who's the strongest era, it's just like 90% Era 1. And I'm like, this is complete crap. The yes, CT is on Era 1. We get it. We also see CT go in an ambulance in the preview, so don't hold out that he's going to be able to carry that entire team on his to himself. Not to say there isn't stronger players, but I think that within the audience, unlike you and I who have been watching the challenge since the beginning, there just once again doesn't seem to be the respect for certain players just because they started in Survivor and Big Brother that they really deserve.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that a lot of times the players in the different eras, I feel like it's half and half. I feel like some players do hold a lot of respect for the new era players, but I think a lot of them think like these new kids don't really know how to play the game or anything. But I think that that's definitely going to be a rude awakening because we do see that in era 1, CT in the preview or in the trailer, he's yelling at his team about something. So you can clearly see that there is a struggle with them working together as a team. So I don't know. I
I
think
don't know.
Era
I
1 is going
think
to be good at a
play
lot
the
of
game,
things.
but what some people haven't picked up is that it's a different game. And the game's evolves and it evolves every season. But Era 1 and Era 2 knows how to play the game the way it was when they played it. And those who have kept coming back have adapted to playing the newer game. Those who started in Era 4 might not know how to play if they were on season 7, but they're not. They're on season 40 and they know how to play a game that made them to get cast for such an iconic season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you hit the nail on the head when you said that the game has evolved because it is season 40 and as much as I think that they're definitely going to bring back some old school things, it is a new era season and
Yeah.
it's either you adapt or you get left behind and we're going to have to see which players are able to make the switch from the old school type of play and adapt to the new school and which ones just
Yeah.
aren't going to be able to do that.
The thing I want to bring up in this era that I find interesting with all the drama that went on season 39 and then really carried the whole off season, it's still being talked about, is Michelle's confessional we get here about I'm gonna have to stitch this relationship between Olivia and Louise back together. And then it instantly cuts to Louise saying she stabbed her best friend. And I'm sitting there going, it's all really a matter of perspective. But I think in this season, what's real probably the talking point in this era, especially amongst the women, is going to go is who, I guess, answering this question, who is Olivia's best friend? Is it Michelle or is it Louise?
Yeah, I think that if you would have asked her this question prior to 39, the answer would have been Nerys. But I think that, I mean, even we did hear Olivia talk about on her podcast that with Nerys, the friendship with Nerys was obviously real, but it was also like her and Nerys didn't see each other a lot outside the game, and her and Michelle did. And
Yeah.
I think that it's also interesting that because we're learning that a lot of people thought that Nerys was also mad at Michelle for a while, and like during the reunion, she told her to shut the F up respectfully. So I feel like by Michelle saying, I need to stitch this friendship back together, it's kind of letting us in as viewers to the fact that Michelle and Nerys still have a friendship. And obviously Michelle and Olivia have a friendship, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably didn't know that Michelle and Nerys still had a friendship, and she's going to be that
Yeah.
person that's going to help them come back.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Other than that, moving forward, I think a couple of noteworthy things to mention. We see right at the end of the episode, before the podiums, we get a connection between Olivia and Thea for the first time. So we all knew that happened. They were just in Mexico together for like 3 weeks. They were in Europe together before that. They were in Bali together before that, living their best lives. But the show really came out and gave us that relationship as early as they quickly could. And it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves going forward.
Yeah, and I will also mention that we got Brad almost stumbling in his words when talking about Emily. And we also got Michelle talking about Devin, which, if you follow
Yeah.
either of them on social media, you know that they are happily dating. So I
Yeah.
think that it's going to be really interesting to see how these romances unfold or if something else that we haven't seen. I'm curious to see if Emily and Brad ever turns into something, but I don't know. I'm just
See,
really excited
in the
for
trailer,
that.
we also see Josh and Naya seem to turn into something.
I did see that, yes. So I think that this season is going to have no shortage of good challenges. It's going to have no shortage of showmance, no shortage of drama. And I'm really excited to start covering the first episode next week.
Absolutely. So that brings us, I would say, close to the end. We're running out of time unless there's anyone else that you wanted to quickly bring up. But
I think we pretty much covered everything unless you have
yeah,
something else.
well, see you all for the when we get the episode 1 done right after the premiere. I will be at Challenge Mania watching with Michelle and Devin, so that's going to be neat. I'll post some pictures onto our story from Instagram, as well as a few other players are coming. Ryan Kehoe's going to be there. Ashley Kelsey is going to be there. Mark Long's going to be there. So a big 40 heavy contingent. So looking forward to that, and I'll see you all when we get the done. always, of course, feel free if there's anything you want to hear, if there's any questions, message us on Instagram, on Facebook. Titi and I would love to take any feedback you have, how we can improve, how you'd like to see this podcast go, or anything you want us to talk about. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who has listened to the cast reveal and then also this episode. And like you mentioned, just leave suggestions on what we can do better in the future or what you would like to see us talk about.
Well, thanks so much to everyone for listening, and we'll see you after episode 1, the premiere. Cannot wait.